we have tonight Bob Hess, W1RH, who's a retired broadcast engineer and has been a hand for plenty of time and has a lot of experience up on hills. So tonight he's going to talk to us about the effects of the 2020 LNU complex fire on the Mount Vaca communication sites. So without further ado, let's welcome Bob Hess.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I gotta say, this will be my third presentation to this club. I heard of Michelle's.
Michelle is on that right here. Yeah, Michelle's who you used to work with.
Yeah, okay. Hello, Michelle. I always enjoyed coming to this club because the room would be packed, and I realize it's not packed tonight. I fully expected that. But also from my office in West Sacramento at CBS 13 and CW 31 before I retired, it was actually a pretty easy drive to just jump on the highway, come over here, do a meeting, go back. But now I'm retired, and I went almost a year without getting a haircut when COVID started. And so, my daughter said, I kind of like your hair a little longer rather than that corporate look. So I look a little different now, I'm a little older, but I'm basically the same guy.
You look like Joe Walsh.
You're not the only guy that said that. Maybe I do need to get a haircut.
So, even though you might need a haircut, I think March was the last time he shaved.
Oh, it's probably before that.
So anyway, I'm sorry you have to look at my club emblem here, but I am president of the El Dorado County Amateur Radio Club. And I was telling the guys here, we also run something called the El Dorado County Neighborhood Radio Watch, which is 6 GMRS repeaters that are used for fire alerts around the county. We have about 300 users. Most are not hams. It's a very, very successful program in El Dorado County, and gosh, we're getting lots of requests for talks we do on that around the country. I've got a talk to give to I think it's a club in North Carolina coming up that heard about what we're doing with GMRS. But that's not what we're here about today. We're going to be talking a little bit about repeaters. Let's see what we got here. I had a video. Oh, the other thing is, this is my first live presentation since a year and a half, just like everybody else. And I've given this LNU complex fire talk to a bunch of radio clubs around Northern California. It's all been from my ham shack on Zoom. I've been into this ham thing since 1963. That was my original call. I do have a W1 call. It's a real W1 call. I worked in Boston for 15 years. Never thought I'd move back to California. CBS transferred me back to Sacramento, where I was born and raised. And here I am, but I kept my one call. So back when I was a teenager, and that's not me in the picture, that is L, N6ADT, who happens to own 1/3 of a repeater that I own 1/3 of, and W6AW owns 1/3 of up on Mount Vaca. And we've known each other since we were teenagers, and we put this repeater up. God, that picture makes us look old. We put this repeater up in El Dorado County, and it was the first 2-meter repeater in El Dorado County. It's sitting right off of Highway 50. You can see the tower in the background. And then later on, we built a 440 repeater on Bass Lake Ridge. So if you head up Highway 50, it's the first really high ridge you come up to right outside of El Dorado Hills. And we had that thing sitting in an outdoor cabinet. We had these things inside that glow in the dark called tubes. And so I've been doing the repeater thing for a long time. This is just a shot of us as kids going up to Mount Vaca to work on a repeater. Joe Perez, who is on the left, he was retired as the Director of Communications for Sonoma County. The guy in the center is Kent Randalls, who's a broadcaster like me and just retired up in Portland, Oregon. And then that's me on the right. So we're here to talk about the LNU lightning-caused complex fire and how it affected the Mount Vaca communications site. Okay, this is a 7-minute video.
Amateur radio is a hobby of many hobbies. One of these is amateur FM. Although there are some FM radios produced for the amateur market, most amateur FM operation utilizes converted commercial two-way radio equipment channelized for operation on specific crystal-controlled amateur frequencies. Here is a typical FMer using his portable unit. This portable is lovingly called Dick's Brick. Portable and mobile operation lends itself well to FM, as much FM operation involves the use of repeaters and remotely controlled base stations with superior locations capable of communication over long distances with such low power units. Most operation is either direct on a simplex basis or through one repeater for local or metropolitan coverage. Some groups have gone further, however, and installed equipment to tie repeaters together. These are called links. The links are turned on by remote control whenever longer distance communication is desired. Here we see a contact from a mobile 15 miles west of San Francisco to a mobile 15 miles west of Lone Pine, California. This communication path goes through 3 repeaters. First through WA6UGY at Mount Vaca in the Coast Range north of San Francisco. Then through WA6TTL at Silver Peak in the White Mountain Range east of Bishop, California. From Silver Peak, we go south to WA6UGQ at Rogers Peak in the Panamint Range. This mobile-to-mobile contact used only 3 repeaters. The Owens Valley link, however, continues south to WB6SLR at Blue Ridge in the San Gabriel Mountains northeast of Los Angeles. What's in these buildings? Things that we've built in our workshops, garages, and driveways. Usually each builder prefers a particular type of equipment, such as the Motorola shown here. We can always rely on our fellow FMers for words of encouragement during the shakedown of new boxes. Some groups who maintain distant mountaintops prefer to make aerial inspections prior to site visits, such as Steve, WB6NOJ, inspecting WB6SLR. Steve's lead has been followed by other clubs who also subscribe to this philosophy, including the Mount Vaca Radio Club, shown taking off on a recent inspection flight. After the aerial inspection, we usually make a trip to the site. The roads are usually hard surfaced, such as this one. Some of our access roads, however, have a rut or two. Now let's take a good look at these sites. This trip to Mount Vaca begins at the world-famous Rio Linda Switching Center. All trips to the hill are carefully planned and thought out in advance. We pride ourselves on our careful, sane approach to these trips. We never forget anything, and we always allow plenty of time for a methodical, safe trip to the mountain. Meanwhile, back at the Rio Linda Switch, in addition to the equipment installation and maintenance, we also have building and grounds upkeep projects with the MVRC members turning out in force to tackle the poison oak. Our work party is an ambitious group. An observer could say that idle chit-chat has never emanated from this mountain. On this trip, brush was removed to reduce the fire hazard. Before leaving the Mount Vaca location at the 2,800-foot level, a final check of equipment operation and status is performed from a remote control location. Conditions are observed on a status board at the control point. Touch-tone commands are sent on the UHF control channels and verified on the touch-tone decoder.
So a couple things about that video. The guy, sort of the star of the video, is Jay O'Brien, W6GO. He was actually my Elmer when I was a teenager. It's called back then was W6GDO. The woman that had the keys on her hand was Jan O'Brien, his wife. And you might note that they said they were clearing brush because of the fire danger. And maybe you also might have noticed the green parts of the mountain in that video. So anyway, what you're looking at right now is a shot of the mountain before the fire. And that's kind of, you know, you all know what it looks like, but there was a lot more green there than there is right now. So then, in the middle of the night, that fire came shooting right through the mountain. And I got to tell you, I came up there the day after the fire. CHP let me go through the roadblocks because I told them I was a radio guy and had to get up to the top. I live in Alvarado County in a very high fire danger area with a lot of oaks and pines, much like driving up to Mount Vaca. All these houses that I had passed over the years absolutely burned to the ground, the entire mountain, everything around it. These pictures, some of these pictures were taken from the PG&E tower, which is right next to our tower. It's our neighbor. That one was from the PG&E tower. So this is a map of the area that was affected, and if you look down there where the circle is, that's where we're focusing on the Mount Vaca communication site. Now, I think we've got another video we're going to play just a little bit here, which is a drone about a week after the fire that will show you some of the devastation. So that last tower that you saw was actually a tower I was associated with. CBS television had a space in a building up there. The tower you saw at the very top was the Channel 5 weather radar. Also the Sacramento Channel 13, Channel 31 had a 2 gigahertz receive site used for live shots, two-way radio system. We shared the site with our sister station, Channel 5. But the interesting thing is they had just, the site is owned, it's the former AT&T site. It's now owned by American Tower Systems. The rent was just getting outrageous. We had talked for years about moving. Just before the fire, CBS moved out of there. So they called that one right. So just a few more shots here of driving up and down the mountain. And this is what I saw about 2 days after the fire. I remember that van parked there all the time. It's just about melted to the ground there. There was a house there. Power lines down all over the place.
Which road did you take though?
I usually take Mix Canyon up there. I was up there today working on the repeater, and I took Mix Canyon up and I took Gates Canyon down. Mix Canyon Road is the road most used to get up to Mount Vaca. There's been all kinds of construction activity, houses being rebuilt, and often there's long delays going up there. Pretty amazing though to see PG&E get the power back up there. I was up there about a week after the fire and they were flying in with a helicopter, pole after pole after pole after pole. And they put a new pole in at our site, and that pole was in like 5 minutes. Took another 2 weeks, I think, to energize everything. But so anyway, there was a house there. Just total devastation, lines down all over the place. That is the power line in front of our building, which is about 10 feet above ground there. This was interesting. There was a house there in back of those tanks up where I live, in a very high fire danger area in El Dorado County. A lot of people, and I've been considering it, are putting in tanks like these. They will have the proper fittings on them so a fire truck can plug into them and pull water out of them. But the interesting thing here is this guy had 2 tanks. His house burned to the ground, and that tank didn't survive too well. Speculation is that it probably didn't have any water in it. So bottom line was he lost his house. I don't know if it was because his tanks didn't have water or it just came through too quick. Just a few more shots of the towers. This tower, you know, I said PG&E has a tower. They're our neighbor tower. They're a couple hundred feet north of our tower. And by the way, when I say our tower, if I didn't say this, there is a building up at Mount Vaca that has been owned by hams since the beginning of time. 5 ham groups lease space in that building, so each one of us have an equal share of the building. And the repeater I'm associated with up there is 147.27, 2-meter repeater, not very active. It'll probably have more activity in the upcoming months. Covers a vast area, but that's why I'm up there in Mount Vaca, and that's most of this talk is going to revolve around our site and what we've had to go through to restore it. So this is the ComSite's West Tower, and at the very top of that tower, there is a steerable dish used by, I believe, one of the Bay Area broadcasters for 2 gig live remotes. And that tower is, I believe, about 185 feet high. And if you can see, that fiberglass radome, if you look real closely, is melted, you know, and that is how hot that fire was at the very top of that tower. In addition, all of these dishes had radome covers over them. All of them burned out. If you look closely, you'll see an antenna that Looks like a cell wave station master antenna just bent over. It just got super hot up there. Again, just all kinds of damage. Yeah.
On the drone shot, all those dishes look brand new. They didn't look like they been replaced in that from the time of the fire to the drone flight.
No, when the question, if the Zoom viewers didn't hear it, was on the drone flight, some of the dishes look brand new. No, when that flight was taken about a week after the fire. Some of these sites had all kinds of defensible space and survived it pretty well. Some of the sites didn't. And this tower right next to ours really kind of took the heat, so to speak, and much more damage done to this tower than ours. Ours is sitting just right on the side of the cliff, a very steep drop off to the west. This tower is our neighbor, but it's sitting more in the center of the ridge. We suspect that fire came through so quick, blowing in from the west, that it kind of went over our site and hit some of these other sites that were more centered on the ridge, but who knows? Who knows why? It's not like our site didn't have damage, and we'll show you that. So our site is if you see a little tan building in the background, there's a 100-foot tower with a bunch of sticks. There's actually 2 towers there. That's our site. There's another shot of it in the background, the ComSite's West Tower in the foreground, our tower, 100-foot tower in the background. And once again, that's our power line, which was down to about 10 feet above ground when I came there. This is a shot from our building. So you can see all of the scrub brush is burned out. This is a corner reflector at our building, and it is owned by a group. They're on 146,625. Used to be the Rams group. I'm not sure what they call themselves now. The corner reflector looks fine. The problem is the coax just totally melted, and the feed on that corner reflector had to be replaced. Just another shot of the tower there. One thing, real concern that we had, if you heard the Mount Vaca group in that video that was taken back in the 60s, mentioned clearing brush, we hadn't done that good a job. I mean, we've gone up there and cleared brush, but not in a while. And our guy wires had brush all around them. I was very concerned about the guy wires. I mean, replacing the guy wires on that tower could be a real issue for us. So one of the radio clubs I belong to is the Motherlode DX Contest Club. I'm VP of that club, and we have a member who is K60K, Jim. And Jim is a tower structural engineer. He is retired from the state of California, and he does building permits and designs for hams now who want to put up towers. So he came up there and brought all his test equipment and everything. And bottom line is he gave our guy wires a clean bill of health. And boy, did we, yeah. Another shot of our building there in the background and all the burned out brush around it. Another shot of the guy wires. You can see how close that brush was. Everything blackened all around, but the guy wires are okay. So that's a shot of our building before the fire. I took that about a year before the fire. So, you know, our defensible space right around the building itself was pretty good. It was the guy anchors that we had kind of neglected. But you can see all how green it is there in the background. You know, that's all gone now. So that's a look at our tower. You're looking at 3 different levels of it. The low level on the left, and the center is kind of mid tower, and on the right is the very top. So at the very top of the tower, we have a master 2-meter receive antenna that's used by all of the 2-meter repeaters up there. And there are 3. There's 147.27, mine, and 146.625. And then there is N6ICW's repeater, very popular repeater in the Sacramento area. I'm trying to think what frequency it is. 195, 147.195, I believe. So the master receive antenna for those repeaters is up at the very top of the tower. In the picture on the left, you see 2 external dipoles. Actually, there's a better shot of it there, 4 external dipoles. That is the N6ICW transmit antenna. I showed you the corner reflector for the 146.625 transmit antenna. And then ours is a station master, which is the white stick on the far right for 147.27. Some of these antennas survived the fire, some didn't. Our antennas and the antenna at the very top did survive. The N6ICW external dipole antenna, those dipoles are all connected with a phasing line made up of coax, essentially RG8. All that coax was trashed, so the entire antenna had to be replaced. So the inside of the building was completely unfazed. I mean, you never know there was a fire. And our building is a concrete block building. It's got a concrete roof, and it's got a steel door, very thick steel door. It's like a bank vault. And because of that, it was unaffected. We hardly had any soot in the building. There were other buildings up there in Mount Vaca that burned to the ground or had extensive damage, but ours totally unaffected. So this is kind of an older shot. We, since the fire, had replaced our repeater up there. Our rack for 147.27 is in the center. N6ICW is on the right, and on the left is a 900 meg repeater. In the center of this shot is the 146.625 repeater. They also have a 1200 meg repeater up there. On the right is a 440 repeater owned by W6CBS. So that's our tower. It looks real clean, unaffected. That's like the day after the fire. Another shot looking up. But take a look at this. If you look real closely, you can see where all of our hardline came in. Now, hardline is kind of coax on steroids, just big coax. Most of it is 1/2-inch hardline and also 7/8 inch. But the old PG&E service entrance only had 1 meter on it. So you see the empty meter slots that had nothing to do with the fire. But if you look at the far left, you'll see that the meter is one big melted glob. I have a close-up of that. I'll show you in a minute. Also, if it was that hot enough to melt the cover on that PG&E meter, you can imagine what it did to the all that hardline, 1,200 feet of hardline, because we had to take every last piece of it down. So another look at the tower. That's the corner reflector again. I'm showing these. Like I said, we had to take down all of the transmission line. Most of the damage of the hard line was down at the bottom of the tower, where I showed you. But there was heat damage, and this is a 100-foot tower, and one antenna. It is a ham radio site, so one of the guys had a delta loop, HF delta loop up there that worked down to all bands down to 80 meters, 10 through 80. And at the very top, there's a little brown thing there, and that was an antenna tuner. And when we took it down, That's what that antenna tuner looked like. I don't know what the manufacturer is, but it was 100 feet up and the heat was enough up there to melt the fiberglass cover on it. Anybody know what that antenna tuner is? Every time I always ask that, and there's always somebody who knows what it is, and I always forget what it was. No more Delta loop at the site. There's that PG&E meter again with close up. And you'll see the hard line that looks okay, but if you look at it real closely above the meter, you'll see a little pits and heat damage there. And I have a close up I can show you in a bit. You know, the guys that own these sites, like most of us hams, we're all getting on in years. I still climb towers. I am 72 now. But the real serious tower work here was done by K6GLR, who happens to be my daughter's husband, who happens to be a very active ham, and it has nothing to do with me. He's a 4x4 guy, and he got his ham license for use on the Rubicon Trail and whatnot. But he loves to climb towers, so we used the hell out of him here. We had him climb up to every antenna on the tower. We dropped down a 100-foot piece of LMR 400, hooked it up to a Tektronix return loss bridge. That's kind of a high-end SWR meter. And we analyzed every antenna. We found 4 bad antennas that were damaged by the heat, but fortunately, most of the antennas on the tower were unaffected. So Tyler is a, you know, one of these millennials who loves to take pictures of himself. And there he is. You can see him. We were doing the antenna tests. He's about halfway up the tower there. Another shot. And of course, he always, whenever he climbs a tower for me, he has to take a picture from the top looking down. So he's up there at the very top. Now there's a closer look at the hard line. Heliax is what it is, and it's just big coax. Low loss, every piece damaged by the heat. We had to pull down every last piece, and it was a lot of work. Tyler was on the top of the tower, or working his way up, you know, disconnecting the ends up there, and then we'd be pulling it down and stretch it out. Some of these runs were, you know, 150 feet long. And there is why we replaced it. Now, if you look at that, good coax, any kind of coax, is going to have a center conductor that is right in the center. And you can see how the heat affected those. That is a piece of 7/8 on the left and a piece of 1/2 inch on the right. And every piece was like that. It was actually kind of amusing. We had no power there for 3 weeks. I hooked a generator up and turned on our 147.27 just to see what would happen. And, you know, some guy in Livermore came back. So, I mean, the antenna was still working. The SWR was pretty high, and we turned it off right away because we did not want to transmit with heliax, coax that looked like that. So there we are. We stretched every piece out, and we cut every piece down into about 5-foot pieces. And I filled my truck up with 1,200 feet of this stuff and brought it to the transfer station in El Dorado, Canada. That's the back of the building, and that was tan, but it was all kind of scorched black. We're hoping we can get up there and repaint and clean it up. We had a new service entrance put in. We had to. It's kind of interesting. If you look at a map and you can believe the map, the tower is in Solano County. The building is in Napa County. So we kind of scratched our head as to which county do we go to for a permit? And I don't think they care, but somebody said, use Solano. So we went to Solano, and I don't think the Solano guy knew where the county line was, and they approved it. You know, I took this a few weeks, not very long after the fire, and it's amazing how things come back to life. I was up there today, and I should have taken some pictures because a lot of it is starting to come back to life, but it still looks like a very bad burned out fire area. That's it. We can take questions, I guess, if anybody has questions.
About replacing the hard line along the windows. That stuff's not it's not 50 cents a foot.
That's true. But I happened to have and still have probably a few thousand feet of hard line in my back 40. Much of it is brand new that I've collected over the years. You know, a cell tower, for instance, might grab 500 feet of hard line, and because it's cheaper that way, and they have a 100-foot piece left over by the time they finish. And I had a good friend who was a cell tower engineer, and he called me up one day and he said, "We have all this stuff, you want it?" I said, "Oh, I got 10.5 acres. I can store it at my place." And it, needless to say, came in very handy. The bottom line is, we had to buy some connectors, but we didn't have to actually purchase any hard line. Yeah.
How did the club get that site in the first place?
Okay, so the question was, how did they get the site in the first place? The 147.27 repeater, which is the repeater I'm associated with, it used to be owned by the telephone pioneers. And it was the first ham repeater up on Mount Vaca. It was actually one of the first communication sites, period, on Mount Vaca. The original site was on a telephone. The radio was actually struck in an outdoor cabinet that was strapped to the side of a telephone pole up there. The land was in the family of one of the members of the telephone pioneers. So how did I get associated with that? Probably about 6 or 7 years ago, a friend of mine who was a member of that radio club, which is Society of Amateur Radio Operators. Sarah was the name of the radio club. And he told me, he said, "You know, we're all kind of dying off and we're getting older. We can't maintain the site anymore. Would you be willing to take over the repeater and keep it going? We'll transfer what we have in our treasury to you." We had a nonprofit. And all we ask is that we still have a group of us that use the repeater for a daily net at 3 o'clock. So we said, sure. So they just gave us the keys, and that was the original repeater in that building. Now, at some point in time, it's ICW and some of the other guys obtained a share of the lease. And at this point, the lease is split 5 ways, equal. So we each have a rack. So any other questions? Any Zoom? Can we take Zoom?
Yeah, we can take Zoom questions.
Yeah.
Anybody on Zoom?
How much of a problem do you have with vandalism?
You know, we haven't had any trouble with vandalism. But I will say that that tower is, I mean, anybody can drive up to Mount Vaca. There are gates, but I've never seen the gates closed. And I've left the site sometimes at sunset, and I'll see, you know, a couple young lovers driving up there for a view of the sunset. So anybody can drive up there. It's a dirt road at the top, but it's not a bad road. And our tower, as you saw, doesn't really have anything to prevent climbing on it. And I really think we should do that. I've been meaning to bring that up, but we haven't had any vandalism. I mean, if somebody wanted to, they could come up there with a hacksaw and do all kinds of trouble. But there hasn't been any vandalism. I've been up there sometimes by myself and seen some very strange people drive along the road. Some of them will stop by and say hi, but never any vandalism.
You have to have insurance for all that stuff up there?
Yeah, we do have insurance for that. That's part of, we all pay into that cost that we pay into. So any other questions?
Was there any questions on Zoom?
Zoom questions?
Michelle, I think you got a question maybe.
Thank you. It was a very interesting presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Love the pictures.
First post-COVID talk that I've given, so I'm glad to come out here and maybe I'll come back sometime, do a fourth.
Please do.
Good.
Bob, just real quick, the opening video, you say that was in the 60s. Do you know what about year that was roughly?
You know, the video was shot, if you, at the very beginning of the talk, I showed a Motorola, old Motorola tube repeater that we had as teenagers up in El Dorado County. And some of that was actually the same stuff, same kind of Motorola equipment showing up there. So that was late 60s, early 70s. So I think that video was probably shot then. It's amazing. As somebody who comes out of broadcasting, I thought the quality of that and the editing done and everything.
I agree, and he
shot
did the
up there.
narration. I mean, it was very Bruce Brown-like.
It was amazing. And that group, there are other videos by them, and that video went on for another 20 minutes showing all the.
Right, I saw you shut it off. They went to another site.
But yeah, if anybody wants links, I can send you.
That was
the
a
links.
69 or 70 Charger.
Right.
Yeah.
69.
Yeah.
66 Dodge man. I used to own one.
There we go. It was at least 69.
Yeah, no, that Charger was the wrong color. It's supposed to be orange. So,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very much.